Continuing our discussion of Chapter 12, we talk about the print production process. And it consists of four major phases. We have the pre-production process, the actual production process, pre-press, and then, of course, printing and distribution. So when we talk about the print production process, we talk about manual print processes, and then, of course, computerized process. Computerized process has made this print production process a lot easier. Before, back in the days of Mad Men and the 50s and 60s, the manual print process was pretty comprehensive, creating rough or comprehensive layouts. He even created actual layer sheets that you would use. Artists would create these layered sheets to create a process, sort of like laying clear sheets upon each other to create an actual image. Typesetting was done manually and placed on these sheets, where then a post-up and a mechanical actual drawing was created to go to pre-press and then actual press. Now it's a pretty computerized process, from the design to the actual plate making, when we're making plates to do the actual press work. You design everything in the computer, which then creates the engraves the plates for the actual press work. So things have come a long way in the last 20 or so years. The pre-production process begins when the final creative concepts are submitted to the production department. So a lot of times in pre-production and any type of product, you want to work backwards from deadlines. That way you can set up checkpoints and when each aspect of the work must be completed. Now, pre-production depends on project planning, typography, as well as job planning itself. All right, so it's important then when we're creating the project planning, we're logging the product, gathering the specifics of the project, and working backwards from the due date. Making sure also in typography that it's readable, that it's appropriate, and it works with the rest of the ad, and there's an emphasis placed on what we want to do. The production manager also needs to decide what's most important for that job. You know, speed, quality, or economy. What paper to use, and obviously what the color palette being used is. And usually with the color palette, we use brand guidelines or brand handbooks to dictate what the guidelines are for that brand as far as the color palette and typography and everything. BW even has a brand guideline book. So if you go to Google and type in Baldwin Wallace brand guidelines, there's actually a document online created that tells us what the visual guidelines are for when we're developing assets and advertisements for Baldwin Wallace. Moving on, when we talk about the pre-production basic choices among speed, quality, and economy, usually we have to sacrifice one in favor of the other two. So sometimes one of these has to be sacrificed to begin the production phase overall. In addition, the production process itself, creating the visual, you may have a photo or illustration. We talked about stock imagery or original, and the factors that go into choosing stock imagery and having the rights to use that stock imagery. It's important. Excuse me. It's important that this decision is made right off the bat, and budget can have a lot to do with it. The production artist then specifies the mechanical aspects of the production. Layouts and base art and overlays are all defined because these things need to be set up during that. If the artwork is simply photographed as is, the result is called a line film. From that, the line plate is produced for printing. Now, there's two different types of things here that come into play. A continuous tone photograph or other illustration requiring gradations in tone cannot be produced on a plate without additional processes. And this is called a halftone screen. So that's important to keep in mind, whether you're using camera-ready art or halftones. After, in the pre-press phase, a plate is created. Now, this plate is created as an actual aluminum-style plate that's engraved with the base art from each overlay. Each mechanical or paste up has to be photographed separately. The various layers of this line art and halftone and then are converted into film negatives, which are mounted carefully together through the stripping process onto flats. Okay? Now, to print in full color, 4 different colors process is used. Now, there's 4 main colors when we talk about print, and you'll hear this a lot. It's called CMYK, and this stands for cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. Black is K, of course. These colors are mixed together to produce a full 4-color processed piece. The last phase of the print process includes the actual finishing of the product, whether the binding, the shipping, the coating. There's even some advertisements that have a feel to it. So for instance, for my brother-in-law's company that deals with lawn care and landscaping, he has business cards that have grass on them, and you can actually feel the individual blades of grass. So it's actually a pretty cool piece of artwork that you can actually feel as well as see. Once the plates and ink are ready, the press is started and stopped a few times to adjust alignment. There's also somebody on site, usually involved in the production process, that played a hand in creating the advertisement. That way they can check the color to make sure that all the color looks correct, that all the Pantones are printing correctly, that all the colors match what the art is supposed to look like. Depending on the nature of the job, different pieces can be delivered to different subcontractors who specialize in certain things. For instance, when we do direct mail pieces that are sealed, they're printed at one facility, and then the wafer seals are applied at a different facility and different company altogether. Sometimes when we print, we send to a mail house with the actual address is actually applied onto the finished piece and then sent out. So depending on the nature of the job, different subcontractors may be involved. During production quality control, things are looked for usually on press or during the production. Misspellings, mismeasured lines, image size, misplaced crop marks, bad line or page makes, text errors, image errors, resolution, quality. These are all production quality issues that are looked upon on the production during production to make sure that quality control is in place. When checking proofs, when it's printed, production managers and art directors look for scratches, holes, dots, blemishes, bad ink coverage, and sometimes we use loupes or magnifying glasses to help inspect dot pattern in halftones to make sure the registration color is perfectly tight. So a lot of times we'll pull out a Pantone wheel or a color wheel and these loupes to make sure that the colors match and that the images are matching up. Now there's a couple different concepts I want you to know the difference of. Two of these concepts are called traps and bleeds. Traps occurs when the one edge of the color or shade overlaps its neighbor by a fraction of an inch to make sure that the white paper underneath doesn't show through. Now, if the artist fails to trap the artwork properly, the printer has to slightly overexpose one negative or slightly underexpose another. Designers also have to take a look at bleeds, which are colors type visuals that run all the way to the edge of the page. This they have to set up their artwork for at least a 1/4 inch of extra color outside the image to accommodate for the variations in printing and the cutting processes. So if you want to create a artwork or a print piece that goes from edge to edge, you usually have to put 1/4 inch bleeds on it to account for the machine cutting and the piece to its final size, and that image and that artwork going all the way to the edge. Next, we'll talk about radio commercial production.